Shut up and sit down.
Howdy guys, this is Andy from Big Mac's Workshop and Painting Studio, and today I am painting Anrakyr the Traveller from the Necron range. Before I get into the meat and veg of the tutorial, just to let you know, we are working on October, and the Orc videos will be starting as of Monday, so keep in check on that, unless you're already a Patreon subscriber, in which case you will have access to them already, so you can enjoy watching them videos as well. So Anrakyr the Traveller, start off with metallic black, which I've belted through the airbrush, quite simply because it gets it done nice and quick. The second layer was painted on with gunmetal, again, the Vallejo colour, which is also done through the airbrush, and then I'm currently doing a non-oil wash. Once I've got the non-oil down and it's all drying, I'm using Games Workshop's Balthazar Gold on his kilt, which is just to break up the mass block of silver. Now I'm doing this in a very similar sort of style to the GW paint job, which is what I was asked to do, courtesy of Dodge, because it's Stu's, which is his lad, and so we're getting a much more standard paint job on there than what we'd normally do. So the top of his crown and some of the trim on his halberd were painted up with War Paints Gold. Now, it's a not particularly great colour, so it took us a couple of coats on this, as it's very, very thin, but you tend to find that with a lot of the gold paints anyway. So yeah, you've got to get a couple of good layers on there because it does take a while. Once I've got the nice smooth coat of gold on the crown and the Balthazar Gold around its kilt, I go over the areas with Anrakyr Earthshade and just add a bit of depth to the areas, and start to add a touch of shadow onto the model. Now this is important, as you know. Adding the depth to the paint job is just as important as adding highlights, as otherwise things just start to look a bit daft. So whilst I'm waiting for the Anrakyr Earthshade to dry, I'm then using a GW standard brush, and I'm highlighting the framework of the Necron, shall we say, in Vallejo's chainmail. It's a nice silver actually. It's quite dark, so you don't have to add too much depth to it. But going over the gunmetal still works out nicely with it. Once I'd got the chainmail down, again with a nice big brush, non-oil, across the entirety of the figure again, just to keep throwing that depth into the model. So I'm really bringing out those recesses, and this will start to add together. I really did struggle with this, trying to get a smooth paint. It took a long time to get the silver work smooth, which was very frustrating for myself. Onto the kilt again, and it is Runelord Brass by GW, and I'm throwing that towards the lower areas of the scales on the kilt to throw some nice bright touches where the overlapping segments sort of pop out from each other. And of course the next layer was Sycorax Bronze, again as a highlight onto the scale sections, towards the lower sections, lower areas of it though, because of the way it overlaps. So it's just kind of a reverse sort of look. Now once the Sycorax Bronze is dried, I start throwing in another Anrakyr Earthshade. Now I'm not using any Lamier on this, didn't really feel the need to, as the sections are very, very large. So there's plenty of place for the paint, the wash to sit. But obviously you do want to make sure you don't get the cloudy look, or sometimes if you get too much wash in there, some of the recesses can start to have a white sort of cloudy look to it. So just be aware of that. Once I go back onto the armour again, it is Runefang Steel by Games Workshop, and this is a very vibrant colour because we're trying to bring it up to the artwork's very vibrant colour palette, and at the minute it's very dark for a necron lord, and the models as standard is quite a bright one. So I'm really starting to add some very high contrasting silvers to really bring out them bright shades to it. The next layer is on the crown again, which is a gold by Vallejo Air. Again, as it is a gold, they tend to be very thin, so it takes a long time to get that paint to actually take. So just take your time. Be aware that the golds are generally a bit rubbish. I still haven't come across a gold that I actually like to use yet. So just take your time. Bring them golds up nicely. So for the final highlights of the section, I had a touch of Runefang Steel to this Vallejo gold, just to add right at the tops of the crown, just to make it really pop right at the top. Now, as you can see, I'm still using a standard brush at this point. With it being quite large plate sections on this model, there's no real need to use anything smaller than a standard for the large part. And I'm just throwing a little bit of Agrax into the recesses of the gold, just to add that final touch of depth to it and really make them blends nice and smooth. Keep the colours shifting really slowly. So I start to pick out some more of the detail work across the bronze work, and I'm still using the Cycorax, which is mixed with Runefang. I'm doing basically the same thing as what I did on the crown. I want to accentuate the highlights just a little bit more without taking it too far away from the colour palette. This basically just makes the model look that bit more interesting. Although, to be fair, I really do feel sorry for anyone who has to paint a lot of silver necrons, because making fully metallic armies look good is not easy. So yeah, just a touch of the Cycorax and Runefang just to the final edges of the scales on the kilt, and just to bring out the final highlights. And then it'll all wash down again with Anrakyr Earthshade, which I did thin down this time because I didn't want it too rich, and just to blend the colours together nicely. You see, that's the cool thing with washes. You can bring them up and take them down all you want, and so long as you are sparing with the wash, you don't take up any of the detail, and you can really work with it. So now I'm working on the final detail work on the model, like the runes and the sort of weird looking orb things and his weaponry. So the base colour was Dark Prussian Blue by Vallejo. Now, as you know, I'm a big fan of this colour. Being a Night Lord player, it's a really nice base tone for any blues we use. This was Dodger's suggestion actually. I was going to use something a little bit brighter, but it did work really well for it. The next layer is Magic Blue by Vallejo Air. This is quite a vibrant colour, so just be aware. Obviously you've got to keep the paint thin as always, but going straight over the top with Magic Blue from Dark Prussian is quite a stark contrast. It's not the only thing I do by hand. It's usually the sort of thing I'd do for an airbrush, so I could get better control of the mix. So onto a GW paint now, which is Teclis Blue, which is a colour I'm really starting to enjoy using. It's very vibrant, but it really does work well with some of the richer dark tones, such as a dark Prussian Blue. And I'm just starting to bring a sort of a glowing effect to the models of the orbs, etc. I'm now mixing a combination of Lothern blue and pale blue grey. I went for quite a vibrant highlight colour at this point, as I wasn't getting the transition I actually desired. So it looks quite stark at the minute on the halberd. So I'm adding a touch more pale blue grey to the Lothern blue, and I'm just adding that to the centre areas of the orbs, and this is just to get that model really looking like it's electrified, so you get that cool sort of glowing look. So next is a Drakenhof Nightshade wash across all the blue areas. I'm using water as well though, just to control the wash on the flatter areas such as the halberd, so I can get more control into it and getting them details real sharp. And as you can see, I'm just going to faff about with the airbrush using the Lothern blue and pale blue grey onto the top of the halberd, just to get that extra sort of blended effect I wanted to have. You can do this by hand, but it takes a long time to get it glazed up or get it layered up, and so it's just a lot easier to do it with the airbrush. So I'm just doing it through that at the minute, just to save myself a little bit of time, and you can get a real cool effect on the halberd. So onto the silvers again. Now I'm using pure silver, which is a Vallejo game colour paint. Now this is the brightest silver we have at the minute. It's even brighter than chrome. However, it is really lumpy, so we have to mix this quite extensively through with water, just to get something resembling a usable paint. Now onto the sort of a glow effect. Now I'm using a sort of a dry brush of Lothern blue, just to go around the orbs and around the runes as such onto the metalwork, just to give it that sort of OSL look, but I'm keeping it really gentle, because obviously doing that with an airbrush is really indiscriminate. You can do it by hand, just build up them layers really slowly with a gentle dry brushing, and you get a kind of an interesting look to it. So once I'd blacked out the staff, and then went over with Scale 75's black grey as the first highlight, and just to use that along the hilt of the handle of the staff, and just to throw a bit of detail. I wanted to keep the staff dark but interesting as well. So once I'd got the black grey on, I went up to Eshin Grey by GW for the first layer of edge highlights across the upper sections of the wrapping. And this is just done nice and thin. I'm using a Winsor & Newton Series 7 00 at this point, as I want to keep the highlights very sharp. I then go straight up to Dawnstone, just to finish off the edge highlights on the staff, making it look that a little bit sharper. The extra edge highlight often makes things look a lot nicer. Now, as you can see, I'm throwing on a little bit too much, so I'm just blending it through with my finger, whilst the paint's still wet, just to get that detail looking right. Now I'm throwing another normal oil wash on the model, and this is not the last wash I'll be doing, because at the end I'll be doing a oil wash over the entire thing as well, just to make those recesses and the breaks between different sections a bit sharper. It really does help doing this sort of thing. And interestingly enough, it is Screaming Skull for a second to last edge highlight on the armour itself. Now, this is something we picked up from a terrain painter, but you can use Screaming Skull for pretty much anything, as long as you keep it thin enough and keep the lines neat enough. Obviously, going over the edge highlights again with one last colour, which is Vallejo's Off-White. You could use Ivory as well, or even a pure white. Just make sure you've got complete control with the with the brush, just to make sure that those edge highlights don't start looking really rough. This is a very important part of the part of the edge highlight, the last one. So you've got to be really careful. Just take your time, keep the paint thin, and you can't go far wrong. So after this has been done, as I've already mentioned, I'm going to put an oil wash onto the model after a gloss varnish, just to pick out those details and bring down the depth of the model as well. So, if this is the sort of thing you want to see more of, please hit like, hit subscribe, share with your friends. Also, please do check out our new and improved Patreon site. This will give you early access to any videos we do, as they will be getting released straight away on Patreon, whereas those YouTube subscribers will have to wait a little while. There is other benefits as well for being a Patreon, and most importantly, it does help us out getting everything we want, so we can show you guys all the videos we want to do and all the bells and whistles anyway. So hope to see you at the next one, guys, so take care and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.